Okay, my dear students, now we have come almost to the end of this chapter of ERD modeling, right? I think you have understood something about ERD modeling, how we can model, how we can draw ERD diagram, isn't it? And ultimately how we can map that ERD diagram into table structure, which is our ultimate aim, right? And definitely you have enjoyed this whole chapter, right? If you have got any doubt, always ask me in the comment section. Also, you can contact me in this email ID bdebika@gmail.com. This is our last lecture of ERD model chapter. We will see how we can map weak entity and how we can map ternary relationship. Now let's start with mapping a weak entity. This is a very simple example, employee and dependent. Dependent is the weak entity because one employee may or may not have dependent. But if a dependent exists, then that dependent must be associated with some employee, isn't it? So there is a existence dependency between employee and dependent. Also, you can see dependent is the weak entity and employee is the strong entity, isn't it? And has is the relationship between a strong and weak entity. That's why it is shown by a double diamond structure. Now, how we can map this kind of ERD diagram into table structure? This is very simple. Let's start. Now, first of all, first rule is you create a separate table for the weak entities with a foreign key taken from the strong entity. Then the second rule is the composite primary key is composed of partial identifier of weak entity and primary key of strong entity. That means here you can see that employee and dependent, we have for employee and dependent, for the weak entity, I have created separate relation which is called as dependent. Okay. Dependent is the separate relation for the weak entity dependent. But I have taken employee ID from employee table as foreign key in this dependent table. Actually, employee is the primary key of this employee table. It is acting as a foreign key in the dependent table. But dependent has got first name, middle initial, last name. These are normal primary key attribute or normal partial identifier. Along with these three, employee ID must be connected to form the primary key of this dependent table. Okay, that means these four columns, first name, middle, last name and employee ID, they form composite primary key. Understand? And remember, the very important note is employee ID should not contain null value because dependent is a weak entity. So if you give null value of employee ID, then dependent weak entity cannot identify any single row because for that employee ID is necessary for any dependent to exist, right? That's why you cannot give employee ID as null. So you have understood this is a very simple. If you have a weak entity, immediately you can form a table structure out of it. But remember, you have to include a primary key of the strong entity as foreign key, and that foreign key will be also part of the primary key of the weak entity, weak table. Next comes ternary relationship. This is also very simple. First step is a new table will be introduced. The new table should contain three foreign keys, one from each of the participating entities, and the primary key of the new table will be combination of all three foreign keys. Let's take this simple example that we have already taken in our previous lectures, employee skill and project. It is a many to many to many ternary relationship. And that's why employee is having its own table, project is having its own table, skill is having its own table. But I have formed another table because the rule is like this. To form a table structure for a ternary relationship, we have to make a new relation, and that new relation will be called a skill used, where we should include the primary key of all these three tables, means employee ID, project ID and skill code. But along with that, definitely you can give some extra attributes. Like over here, I have given a certificate as the attribute. That means certificate ID for that particular project and skill what employee has got. So extra attributes you can add to the skill use table. But you must remember that employee ID is acting as a foreign key, project ID is acting as a foreign key, and skill code is acting as a foreign key. But taken these three attributes together, all three attributes together, we have to form the primary key of the skill use table. Understand? So this composite primary key will have three attributes: employee ID, project ID, and skill code. So in this way, basically, we can do the ternary relationship mapping. So I think, students, you have understood all different kinds of relation and their mapping into table structure. So with this, we have come to an end of a chapter, which is a very important chapter of database management system, which is entity relationship modeling, or ER modeling. Congratulations, my dear students. You have completed a very important chapter of DBMS. So please stay tuned for my future lectures. Definitely, you will understand this subject very well. Thank you so much.